questions. Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, the Territory Coordinator holds unprecedented powers affecting major projects, businesses and community outcomes in the Territory. Your appointment of Stuart Knowles, whose documented animal neglect charges raise grave concerns and questions about his character, his judgment, has deeply disturbed Territorians and eroded public trust. Chief Minister, given these allegations, can you please detail to the Parliament what vetting processes were undertaken before appointing Mr Knowles? And Chief Minister, were you aware of these animal neglect charges before appointing him?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Opposition Leader for her question. And it's important to be talking about the role of the Territory Coordinator. I am on record, Opposition Leader, as saying, I said it publicly at a press conference, that I was not aware about these historical matters that took place over a decade ago. But suffice to say, they are historical in nature. They were dealt with by the regulator, and Mr Knowles has been very clear over his deep regret over what took place and been very public about it. Moving forward is the really important part for the Territory Coordinator role. And while Stuart Knowles is our Territory Coordinator, he's supported by a team of people who's really focused now on making sure that we are supporting significant projects in the Northern Territory to get off the paperwork and come out of the ground. And that's something we just didn't see under Labor. It's why we've had to make really big changes to regulatory frameworks right across the board. And we've done a huge amount of work, whether it was Territory Coordinator, whether it was abolishing third-party merits review and the water planning and petroleum acts. We've got the approvals, fast-track task force work coming. Regulation continues to be this, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, inhibitors to investing in the Territory. And we've had the benefit of having Dr. Brendan, an economist from KPMG. He spoke at the Treasurer's budget breakfast this morning, a breakfast the CLP is proud to return to. Transparency and engagement with industry and the community. I note, Opposition Leader, you were there, and I thank you for your attendance. And as part of what Dr. Brendan was talking about was around regulation and the levers of government that you can control and doing the things you can control to yield positive outcomes for the community. And that's exactly what the role of Territory Coordinator is. We've got extensive powers to be able to support those significant projects.
Chief Minister, what's your point of order, Opposition Leader?
Standing on a 1-1-0 relevance, the second part of the question, Chief Minister, was can you please tell the Parliament what type of vetting processes were undertaken with your appointment of Mr Knowles?
I think the Chief Minister might have covered that, but
thank you.
Please continue.
Yeah, so the role is an appointed role. Obviously, the legislation then sets out a criteria and the person of Territory Coordinator has to meet that criteria. And so that process took place, and it goes through all of the legislative processes that we passed just a few weeks ago, Madam Speaker. So that's all been done. And again, as I said, these are historical matters that were dealt with by the regulator over 10 years ago, and they've been addressed by Mr Knowles. But what's most important about the Territory moving forward is that we have that regulatory framework right. We now have the most competitive settings when it comes to having this type of support for significant projects, and now we're doing the remaining work to support small and medium businesses in the Territory.
Minister. A supplementary, Opposition Leader.
Thank you. Chief Minister, given the extensive powers that the Territory Coordinator position holds, what will you do in terms of holding to account, whether it's Mr Knowles or any future Territory Coordinator, so that the Territory public will have trust in and faith in the integrity and the character of such a position?
Chief Minister.
Well, Mr Knowles is a man of utmost integrity. He's contributed widely to the Northern Territory over many decades. He's served our country as a soldier in the army, and he's, I pick up on the interjection. If, Member for Goja, if you want to be a gutter politician, that's a matter for you.
Silence.
Extremely offensive. What we have is a historical matter dealt with by the regulator. That's how these things work. If someone has done something, the regulators are there to be doing that accountability process, and that process has entirely taken place, and it took place more than 10 years ago. Now, Mr Knowles has been very open and answered all of the questions that people have, and that is the end of the matter.
Member for Wanguri, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, I often get asked by the people of Wangari how this government can help with the cost of living. Families in particular tell me that they're continuing to struggle with the rising costs of groceries and rent in Wangari. To feed a family these days can cost well over $500 a week at the local shops. Chief Minister, I know the budget that was handed down this week was a responsible budget to help fix the mess Labor has left us in. But can you please update the House on the cost of living support that is available to the people living in Wangari?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Member for Wanguri, and you're such a tireless and passionate advocate for your community. I enjoy spending time out there with you whenever I can. And you're right, you and I have both been door knocking where people talk about cost of living. And you're also right that our budget delivers some of that really important relief that people in your community and communities right across the Northern Territory are expecting. And as Assistant Treasurer as well, I know you take a very keen focus on making sure that our budget that we've delivered, a budget that restores confidence, a budget that rebuilds the territory, is making a difference in people's everyday lives. And that's a very important part of responsible government. And so yesterday the Treasurer released the budget, and we've seen embedded in that budget $290 million in cost-saving measures for Territorians, which is significant. And we're very proud to be able to deliver that. Whilst we see CPI coming down and within those ranges that the RBA is finding tolerable, it's still having a big impact on people no matter where they live. We know that 85,000 householders and small businesses across the territory, receive power bills, and everyone dreads that moment when it comes in the letterbox. We've been able to cap that increase at the 3% mark, and that alone is around $206 million, and that represents a real saving to everyday Territorians of about $425 over the course of the years. That's money that they haven't had to haven't had to make tough decisions around whether they send their kids to ballet or swimming or engage in sport because of that relief we've been able to provide through the community service obligation. There's also $14.4 million in pension carer concession scheme, which is for our amazing seniors and our pensioners and our carers who do an incredible job, and we've got to be looking after them and keeping them here in the Territory, most importantly. I've been out to the seniors in your electorate. They're an amazing bunch. We've got $400,000 for subsidised water and sewerage for religious and charitable organisations, again, the lifeblood of our community providing services. There's our amazing $9.8 million homegrown territory grants, which we extended yesterday, getting more people into home ownership, which is really, really exciting because people just can't afford to save for a deposit. And that $50,000 goes a long way to being able to support people with their deposit, bed themselves into home ownership, and then they'll stay here for the long haul. There's lots of other wonderful bits: free swimming lessons for primary school age students, free meningococcal B vaccines, early childhood subsidies, sports vouchers, back to school vouchers, free driver's licences, 12-month car registration. There's a lot in this budget for everyday Territorians. We're supporting easing the cost of living pressures on everyday Territorians so they can love living in the Territory.
Member for Daly, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Tourism and Hospitality. Minister, following serious revelations about the misuse of taxpayers' money at the Darwin Waterfront Corporation, you had a clear choice: order an independent investigation or do nothing. You chose to do nothing. Instead, you relied on a briefing prepared by the very agency under scrutiny, the Waterfront Corporation. You then publicly claimed you assumed everything was fine based on that briefing alone. How can Territorians have any confidence in your judgment when you dismiss serious allegations, not with evidence, but with blind faith?
Minister for Tourism and Hospitality.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. And it's a really good opportunity to publicly explain why I've not called for an independent inquiry into these recent online allegations about the waterfront, because I actually do take all allegations concerning government agencies very seriously. But I take it seriously when there is substance, and I will not hesitate to initiate any appropriate investigations if it is needed. But not all online claims have substance, Madam Speaker, which is why I went to the CEO of the Department of Chief Minister and Cabinet and also the CEO of the Darwin Waterfront, who did consult with that board. And based on this process, I am satisfied that those allegations don't warrant any further investigation. So while I'm not going to repeat what the claims were, what I will say is that the portfolio responsibilities, where the claims were that the waterfront has always reported to the Chief Minister, are actually incorrect. They have reported to Tourism before, the Infrastructure Minister before, and they're back sitting under the Tourism and Hospitality Ministry now, as were they were after we were sworn in as new ministers of this government. The administrative arrangement orders that commenced on the 28th of November placed the waterfront under the tourism portfolios to align with the priorities. And a simple online search of this legislation will tell you that this establishes the Darwin Waterfront Corporation, the Darwin Waterfront Corporation Act 2006, which makes it clear that the CEO of the corporation is a Darwin Waterfront board member. And you can only have to look at sections 6 and 9 for anyone that's following online. This is also clearly stated in annual reports published on the DWC website. There is therefore no serious question about governance as it's been claimed.
Take your seat, Minister. What's your point of order, member for Daly?
Relevance. What is this evidence based off that you're assuming?
I'm definitely going through a lot of detail here.
Minister, I think you can continue. There's time for you to
Thank you.
address that.
I'm answering the question. If you would let me finish, then maybe you would listen to what it is. So the allegations about board appointments, the reason I had to find a new chair, Madam Speaker, was because the last one, which was Richard Fijo, appointed by Labor, actually resigned. So I did go out and find a new chair. Mr Patrick Bellett has extensive experience in property development, and of course his passion for the territory makes him the ideal chair, which is why I chose him. Because, Madam Speaker, we want the Darwin Waterfront to be the iconic tourism destination that it is, not only for tourism but for Territorians. This is the ultimate bipartisan precinct that we have. It was introduced by Labor millions of years ago, and every government has supported it. Why can't you understand that?
Your time has expired, Minister. Member for Fanny Bay, what is your question? Quiet, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Treasurer, before the CLP government formed, the Northern Territory's payroll tax system was unfit for purpose. And with hundreds of small businesses in the Fanny Bay electorate, I heard all about it during the campaign. It weighed down small businesses and charities and not-for-profits, wasting time and money which should have been put towards doing what they do best. This CLP government took action as soon as we got into government, making our payroll tax the most competitive in the country. However, the Northern Territory continues to be the only jurisdiction in Australia that still requires charities and not-for-profits to pay payroll tax for activities deemed as commercial or competitive. Treasurer, how does the CLP Finocchiaro government's first budget take action to support our community sector through continued economic reform?
Treasurer. Quiet, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I pick up on the interjections from the Leader of the Opposition before I've even stood up to give my answer. She may not like the answer. Anyway, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member for Fanny Bay for the question. The member for Fanny Bay is quite right. The CLP entered government presiding over an outdated payroll tax system and years of Labor inaction on the issues that matter. Our community services are buckling under the pressure of operating under Labor with, buckling under the pressure of operating under Labor with our government and our budget left to pick up the pieces. The Territory has the highest aged care occupancy in the country, and yet we have the lowest beds per capita. Our aged care shortages are so bad that we are taking up limited hospital beds trying to care for Territorians that should be getting proper long-term care for from aged care providers. You would think that the former Labor government would have done everything in their power to support charities and aged care providers to fix this problem. And yet the former Labor government did nothing to create the economic environment where service providers could deliver services without being weighed down by the administrative burden and cost of paying payroll tax, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, no other jurisdiction in Australia requires these organisations, our childcare centres, our aged care homes, our crisis housing providers to pay payroll tax. What incentive do they have to come to the Territory and help us pick up the pieces of Labor's 8 years of community inaction when coming here will actually cost them money? Territorians in our community sector deserve better, Madam Speaker. Territorians deserve the services other Australians expect and get at a bare minimum, and the community sector deserves a government which backs them and helps them to do what they do, to do it easier and cheaper. Madam Speaker, that's why the CLP Finocchiaro government's first budget, which I handed down just yesterday, we are addressing these issues by taking the payroll tax reforms we've already introduced to benefit small businesses further, so that they benefit our charities and not-for-profits as well. We're doing this by ditching the commercial and competitive test that charities and not-for-profits were subject to when seeking payroll tax exemptions. We're cutting red tape that encourages investment in aged care, disability support and childcare. The CLP's changes will free up resources, time and money so charities and not-for-profits can focus on what they do best, which is serving our community, Madam Speaker. Under Budget 25-26, organisations that serve the community and do it self-sufficiently will finally have a reason to come to the Territory, offer their services to Territorians and stay here. Madam Speaker, this is just another way that Budget 25-26 continues to take action, provides certainty and supports our community sector so they can do what they do best. Thank you.
Member for Guadja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the current Attorney-General. Just last week you announced the appointment of Ms Catherine Vermaad as Director of the Legal Aid Commission in the Northern Territory, despite an independent selection panel finding her unsuitable for the role. Legal aid staff and senior management have described this decision as offensive, unfair and a move that undermines the confidence and integrity of public appointments under your government. It has triggered resignations of 3 board members, including the chair of the Legal Aid Commission. Attorney-General, Territorians expect integrity and transparency when it comes to senior public sector positions. How can you justify your direct appointment of an individual to such a crucial role when an independent expert panel found them unsuitable? How can Territorians trust you, the highest law officer in the Northern Territory, to act with transparency and integrity after this blatant political captain's pick?
Attorney-General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to answer these questions that you have about our legal aid system. It definitely feels like a bit of a mudslinging match today with the Labor opposition over there. They just don't seem to have anything to do with the budget to talk about, so they're going to throw mud at us, which is interesting. An interesting strategy.
Okay,
interesting
let's keep
strategy.
it down.
So let me talk to you about legal aid. Firstly, it was in disarray over the last 8 years. They've been calling for reform, calling for funding for years under Labor. They are part of a very broken justice system, which you broke because you let a crime crisis get out of control. You didn't invest in the justice system, into courts, into corrections, and of course you didn't invest into legal aid. It was hopscotch all over the place. So I have made a very deliberate, Madam Speaker, very deliberate change management decision to change the leadership of legal aid because they absolutely need reform. We have now given them a certainty of funding of an extra $5.5 million ongoing year after year, which gives them certainty so they can go and make changes within their organisation, which they absolutely need to, because what was happening before under the crime crisis was not working. That was clear. They told us that every second of the day.
Take your seat, please, Minister. Member for Gwadja, what is your point of order?
Standing Order 110, relevance. A direct question is, why did you undermine the independent decision made by an independent committee about the appointment?
Sit down. Thank you, Member for Gwadja. Minister, you've got plenty of time to answer that.
Thank you, and I'm absolutely answering that question right now. It's just that the member for Gwadja is not listening to it. So Ms Vermaad, who is the new Legal Aid Director as of next month, was a direct appointment by me under the Legal Aid Act of 1990. And I said before, she is a deliberate change management appointment. She brings a diverse experience across the legal sector in both the Northern Territory and South Australia. She has worked for a number of organisations. She worked in the local courts,
please.
the Supreme Court. She's done circuit courts. She's done remote communities. She's worked in prosecutions and in defence. She's worked for Legal Aid before. She's worked for Ngarja before. She was a barrister at the Len King Chambers. And guess what? She also worked for Mayleys, which is excellent because Mayleys is a good local, large, experienced law firm in the Northern Territory. So if she's worked there for a little while, then, you know, maybe she's worth a conversation.
Take your seat, Minister. You're right, Member for Fanny Bay. This is not a good situation. It's too noisy. Please tone it down. Minister, you've got the call.
So I'm backing in Legal Aid. I'm backing in the change that we are making in there. If there are people in Legal Aid that aren't happy with decisions, then...
Member for Gwadja, what is your point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, 110.
No speeches, Member for Gwadja.
It's not a speech. 110, relevance. Why did you ignore the independent panel's assessment?
Okay, I think she's got that bit. Minister?
Do I have to say it again? I have deliberately chosen to appoint under the Legal Aid Act 1990. Do you want me to go and find those clauses for you, Member for Gwadja?
Can you just pause? You've asked the question. You have to listen to the answer. Minister, you've got the call.
Like I said, I'm backing in Legal Aid. We need them. And you know why we need them the most? Because we need justice for victims. And victims have been left by Labor over the last 8 years. We are not going to leave them and let them hang out to dry. We're going to invest in our legal services.
Your time has expired. Member for Goyder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Mining and Energy. Minister, yesterday we heard the delivery of the Northern Territory budget for the 25-26 financial year. At present, the Territory's own source revenue accounts for less than 30% of the NT's budget. In 24-25, taxes and royalty revenue comprised approximately 38% of our own source revenue and 11% of total revenue. Mineral royalties contributed over $200 million to the NT Treasury in 24-25. Minister, however, by comparison, Western Australia is estimated to receive almost $12 billion in mineral royalty revenue in 24-25, comprising almost 20% of their total revenue. Could you please outline to the Assembly, hopefully in silence, our government's action to grow our own source revenue throughout the resource sector?
Minister for Mining and Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Gawler for the question, because we all know that he's a numbers man and we all know how good he can add up. So he knows that the mining royalties pays for education. Mining royalties pay for the police. Mining royalties pay for the health department. So that's where that money comes from. So that's why it's so important, Madam Speaker, that we grow it, because we know over the last 8 years the failed Labor government didn't back that industry, and that's why we've got $11 billion worth of debt, because they didn't back it. We need to grow our own resource revenue because it's a significant benefit to the Northern Territory. We expect a substantial increase in mineral royalties and the associated revenue from that going forward, because there are several projects coming online this year, Madam Speaker, and these include the recommencement of operations at Gemco, the opening of the Nobles Knob mine in Tennant Creek, the land of opportunity, opening the Francis Creek iron ore mine near Pine Creek, Verdant Minerals Amaru phosphate mine in Central Australia. So, Madam Speaker, we are talking about mining royalties and mines right across the Northern Territory. And not only, Madam Speaker, do we get mining royalties, we get jobs. We get jobs for local Territorians and money coming into the Territory invested in local areas like the Land of Opportunities. Madam Speaker, in 23-24, the mining sector formed the largest contributor to the NT state product at 28.5%. As per the budget outlook in 25-26, revenue and taxes from royalties are expected to yield almost $1.1 billion. Of this, 32% or $346 million are petroleum and mining royalties alone. And Madam Speaker, like I said at the outset, that pays for education, that pays for the health, that pays for the police. In fact, that pays our wages. So that's why it's so important. And Madam Speaker, as the Minister for Mining, I'm committed to increasing the size, the scope and benefits of our mining industry for all Territorians. Without a thriving mineral exploration and new mines coming online, we cannot fund services or keep energy prices affordable for Territorians. GEMCO and the new Nobles Knob gold mine in Tennant Creek are both set to commence operation in the coming weeks. That represents 2 additional royalty streams for Territorians, with more in the pipeline. Our government is fast-tracking approvals to get these generational mining projects finally up and the investment decision made as quickly as possible. In the gas space, we saw record expenditure on gas exploration in NT last year of $370 million, a testament to our resource potential.
Minister. Opposition Leader, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister, the Minister for Police. Chief Minister, in opposition, you said you would implement the recommendations from the Police Resource Review. Chief Minister, with police shouldering much of the responsibility of your law and order agenda, these reforms are needed now more than ever to bolster attrition and to ensure that morale across the police force, especially with your capped 3% pay offer on the table, which has outraged the Northern Territory Police Association. Chief Minister, can you advise the House on the status of these recommendations, particularly measures to better support the wellbeing and the welfare of our hardworking police?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Opposition Leader for her question, because she's right. Policing and community safety is our #1 priority as a government, because it's the #1 priority of Territorians, and we've not only backed that in with the strongest bail laws in the country and much greater powers for police in the last 9 months, something we urgently did as soon as we came to government. But we've also delivered on that commitment through our budget yesterday with a record police budget of $608 million, $47 million bigger than the previous Labor government, plus spends on infrastructure, the money of which sits within the infrastructure department, which is for police infrastructure. So we are supporting them with the dollars they need to have the resources they need. We've got the police college full of police, and we are really looking forward to continuing to working with them. Now, the police review is just work in the background that continues on. I don't have a specific update on each recommendation. Opposition Leader and the NTPA is happy to. I'm happy to talk to them about it. They've not raised it with me. So all of that work is just being done within the agency. It's just sort of a blueprint forward. And there are many components of which are well advanced. As you're aware, the previous government didn't accept all of them, and neither did we at that time in opposition. But certainly it remains a blueprint, for lack of a better word, on certain types of reform and ways forward. Just like everything else. And so we continue to work very closely with police to be making sure they have what they need when they need it. And I think a good example of that is around Nightcliff Police Station. You had a bit of a sledge in your speech today, which I find highly comical, because you were the one who built Nightcliff Police Station when you never should have. You were the one who wasted $12 million on a building that isn't operational and capable for police. You were the one who did not fund police to house police in that building, and you are the one now trying to ask me to politically meddle in operational decisions of police, which I will not do. I will not do that, because I am not a police commissioner. I'm not a police officer. And the best people to decide how they can deploy 000 calls to the community is the police, Madam Speaker.
Opposition Leader, what's your point of order?
110 relevance. The question was specifically around an update on the recommendations. If the Chief Minister doesn't have that, would she take it on notice and report back to the Parliament?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, I can report back, but I've got 22 seconds to confirm that a CLP government will not meddle in the operational decisions of our police because it's too important to muck around with like Labor used to. And if Labor hadn't have stuck their nose in the first place, we'd have $12 million that we could probably put into the pay deal instead of a giant building sitting in Nightcliff with an insulting sign on the side of it.
Your time has expired. Thank you. Member for Blaine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education and Training. Minister, I am proud to be part of a government who has made community safety its #1 priority. This is what my residents of Blaine want investments in most. I'm pleased that Budget 2025 delivers widespread action across the board to improve community safety and reduce crime, including in our schools, as a father of 3 young boys who currently attend our schools. I know that other parents of Blaine want their children to be safe in school. Minister, can you please explain how the 2025 education budget will help improve safety in our schools?
Minister for Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Blaine for the very important question. And he is right, every child should feel safe in our school environments. In recent months, we've seen unacceptable behaviours in our schools, and I know firsthand the impact it's had on my local community in Katherine, and we saw that play out at the start of the year. The CLP recognises education's critical role in building a safe and strong territory. As part of our plan to address the root causes of crime, we are investing $12.9 million in school attendance officers to get more kids to school and away from a life of crime. But we also need to ensure, Madam Speaker, when kids go to school, they can learn uninterrupted and in a safe and secure environment. That those youth may require extra support, receive it from a qualified professional. That is why this year's budget will see an extra $1.8 million a year ongoing to expand qualified counsellors in school, as well as $3.5 million to continue the school-based policing program, which is also an addition to the passing of Declan's Law, which gives police greater power to detect and stop knife crime on school grounds. Employing qualified counsellors, Madam Speaker, in our schools was an election commitment which we are delivering on. The additional $1.86 million will allow 14 full-time school counsellors to be employed with a plan to expand this to 20 by June next year. This new program will establish a qualified workforce of school counsellors with proper professional oversight to provide vital support to children in our schools. We will also further expand the essential qualifications required to include counselling, social work and psychology to ensure we have, as I said, a highly qualified workforce supporting our schools with evidence-based programs and critical incident responses. And Madam Speaker, I emphasise qualified because that is what you get from a CLP government, a stark contrast to the Labor Party who at the 11th hour before the election last year announced unqualified wellbeing officers to be rolled out in schools. Our children need access to appropriately qualified and highly trained professionals to deal with the complex issues some of our children face, and that is what the CLP's new expanded school counsellor program will deliver. We know there is still a long way to go to reduce unacceptable behaviour in our schools, but, Madam Speaker, the tide is turning. In Term 1 this year compared to last year, there were 17 less assaults on school staff and 4 less school lockdowns. The numbers are still too high, and it is not acceptable behaviour, and we are taking it very seriously. Our new school counsellor program is real action that will deliver real positive outcomes across the territory for Territory kids.
Member for Arafura.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. Minister, code yellows are an important part of managing our peak demands in our hospital. They also ensure the community knows when patient demand is high. The AMA anti-president, Dr. Rob Parker, said on radio today that there has been a directive not to call code yellows at Royal Down Hospital. Minister, was it you or the Chief Minister who ordered the Department of Health to stop calling code yellows? And did you interfere with this operational matter to avoid public scrutiny or your government's management of the health system?
Minister for Health.
Well, thank you to the member for Arafura for the question. It is a great question because we know that we've got some of the best staff here in Darwin and right across the Northern Territory. And I do want to say that just quickly that being at the Nurses and Midwifery Awards just the other night, it really highlighted to me the professionalism, the commitment and the quality of staff that we've got right here in the Northern Territory. So to come in here today and start slagging off at our staff in the Northern Territory health system, you should be ashamed of yourself, because when we talk about code yellows, here you are criticising the NT Health staff for the way that they're doing business, because what they've done is absolutely...
Take your seat, please, Minister. What's your point of order? Opposition.
1-0 relevance has absolutely nothing to do with the question. It's around where did the directive come for hiding the code yellows.
Please take your seat. He's just started. I think he's got time to be highly relevant.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and obviously it's hit a bit of a nerve over there, because when it comes to code yellows, what we do know about code yellows, Madam Speaker, and Labor doesn't want to hear about code yellows, because what you all know that under the Labor government back in 23, 24, I don't know how many there were, and I hear numbers being quoted behind me. It was 16 or 18 code yellows under the Labor government. So this seemed to be happening on a regular basis, and I suspect it was probably during the Leader of the Opposition, during her term as the Health Minister, that we were seeing an absolute increase in code yellows right across the board. But when it comes to what's happening at the hospital now, Madam Speaker, what we've been able to do is work with the staff. We have a new CEO in place overseeing NT Health here in the Northern Territory. But what we've seen is many times where there has been an increased demand here in Darwin at the emergency ward. But what we've seen is better coordination, better collaboration, staff working together.
Take your seat, Minister.
Here we
what
go
is your
again.
point of order, Opposition Leader?
1-0. The question was very clear. Was it the Health Minister or the Chief Minister who gave the directive to hide the code yellows?
Minister, you've got the call.
Thank you, and yes, I think she's still upset about the code yellows under her watch, but there has been no direction given, Madam Speaker. What I started saying was that what we have is the staff, management, all working together to deal with the absolute pressures that are constantly felt in the emergency area of the hospital. And most of those is brought about because of the lack of investment by the Labor government when it comes to aged care patients still taking up beds in the emergency ward. There has been no directions given. Let me make this very clear.
Order.
Let me make it very clear, Madam Speaker. There's been no directions given to anybody in the health system to stop code yellows. What we have is better coordination, better management. This is what Labor failed to deliver for the last 8 years.
Member for Fong Lim will be heard in silence, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence. Minister, domestic and family and sexual violence has no place in the Territory. As previously stated in this House, over the last 8 years of Labor governance, the Territory has seen an 82% increase in domestic violence across the Territory, tearing families and communities apart. Can you please update the House, Minister, on the permanent, ongoing baseline funding outlined in the budget, and how this funding will address the root causes of domestic, family and sexual violence and keep Territorians safe?
Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Fong Lim for your question. I know that you work very hard in your electorate to address concerns around DV
and the egregious impact it has on our community, and I very much appreciate your support in addressing the root causes of domestic violence. And I'm pleased to be able to update the House, Madam Speaker, on how the Finocchiaro government's record-breaking commitment of $36 million ongoing baseline funding to address the scourge of domestic, family and sexual violence that exists in our community will make real inroads in addressing the root causes of domestic, family and sexual violence. Critical to addressing the impact of DV in our community is recognising that this is a battle we are fighting on two fronts. The first is the crisis front, providing support to victims of domestic violence to find safety and support and deal with the perpetrators of what is without question the most heinous of crimes. The second is the prevention front, working to address the root causes of domestic, family and sexual violence with the goal of ending this vicious cycle, Madam Speaker, of violence against some of the most vulnerable members of our community. This record funding works to do just that. Madam Speaker, it provides security to existing frontline services who too often have walked the tightrope of funding uncertainty. And it injects new funding into programs that will work hand in hand with existing services in a coordinated cross-government approach as well as with the NGO sector. Madam Speaker, $9 million has been allocated to ensure continuity of existing programs in community settings for people committing DV, whole-of-government policy and coordination, primary prevention grant programs, all of which are critical to addressing the root causes of DV, specialist witness support, counselling for women prisoners, working to break the cycle of violence. This equates to 21 NGO programs that were about to fall off the funding cliff as a result of the failure of those on the other side to provide continuity of funding, being able to continue to provide critical services. A further $9 million has been provided to expand existing programs like specialist service funding for integrated response, programs in prisons, family safety frameworks, specialist DV courts. Madam Speaker, most importantly and most critically, $18 million has provided to fund new programs, all of which will play a pivotal role in addressing the root causes and breaking the cycle of DV. Circuit breaker, co-responder models, DV resource centres, specialist health responses. Our government is absolutely committed to addressing the root causes of domestic violence, and this funding is a clear demonstration of our willingness to do just
time
that.
has expired, Minister. Member for Nightcliff.
Chief Minister, our independent anti-corruption commission says that it is improper conduct to favour mates for senior public servants' positions. You found that in such a circumstance, the position of a person who engaged in that conduct is untenable. Chief Minister, why is there one rule for the Police Commissioner and yet another for your Attorney-General, appointing the new Legal Aid Director, contradicting the hiring panel who found them unsuccessful for the role, but whose reference was your deputy's brother? How can Territorians trust your government if all they see is nepotism and jobs for mates?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and we've already had a question about this which has been answered by the Attorney-General, and the Attorney-General has very clearly laid out that under the legislation she appoints the Legal Aid Commissioner, and that Legal Aid has been suffering an incredibly tough time over years and years. Chronic, unsustainable underfunding. There's been a bit of a change at the top, and it just requires an entirely fresh set of eyes, and I don't think anyone could dispute that. And so, yes, while some people are taking umbrage at the Minister exercising her powers under the legislation, that is what a Minister is here for. Otherwise, the public service would run everything. There'd be no members of Parliament, and we can all go home and not worry about doing anything. I mean, this is how government works. Ministers have to be able to make decisions, and these are strategic decisions that have to be made at the very highest of levels. And so we've got a chronically broken justice system because Labor has not invested where it's needed to. So we've had a legal aid service having top up funding every year. That doesn't allow them to employ lawyers long term. It doesn't allow them to have a strategic plan. It doesn't allow them to really work out where their place in delivering legal services is and what their remit is. And then on top of that, you've got the clogging then of the courts when legal aid isn't functioning. And we saw a few months ago, maybe it was late last year now, where they weren't going to be able to even hold cases, which means cases would be adjourned. It means there'd be no access to justice for victims, and it means offenders or people will continue to be on remand or on bail for prolonged periods of time. So legal aid is a fundamental piece of the justice puzzle.
Chief Minister, please take your seat. Member for Nightcliff, what is your point of order?
Just referring back to the question, it wasn't about the functions of legal aid, but why is there one rule for Police Commissioner and another for your Attorney General? How can Territorians trust your government if all they're seeing is nepotism and jobs for mates?
Chief Minister.
I don't accept the premise of your question whatsoever. This is like comparing apples with Lego pieces. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense, gibberish from the other side. I mean, it's all very easy to sit there and lay back in your offices and conjure up these absolutely ridiculous questions. But at the end of the day, we have a government to run. We can't sit around waiting for the day that we might make the member for Nightcliff happy, Madam Speaker. That day will probably never come. So we're pretty comfortable with that. We're moving forward because Territorians have given us a very important job to do. For the Attorney General, former Attorney General, to be yelling out across the chamber, saying one rule for one rule for another, just shows how bad a government they were. Because what we have is a minister exercising her legal power under the Legal Aid Act to do her job. And now she's being criticised for doing her job. It's a bit like when we implemented our election commitments last year and everyone said, oh, why are you doing that? Because we said we would, Madam Speaker. And so the Attorney General is doing her job, getting things done. That's our government.
Chief Minister, the member for Drysdale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Treasurer, you were given the difficult task of handing down the CLP for Nokiaro's government's first budget after inheriting deep deficits, record debt and unfunded infrastructure programs and cost blowouts. How's that for a legacy, Madam Speaker? With the budget this CLP government handed down yesterday, you've managed to introduce a budget which starts the hard slog of repairing the budget whilst rebuilding our economy. Treasurer, how does the CLP for Nokiaro government's first budget rebuild our economy through revenue initiatives?
Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Drysdale for the question. Madam Speaker, I've said it before and I'll say it again. 8 years of Labor's budgets have left the Territory in a mess, and the CLP's first budget is mopping up that mess. The CLP is repairing the budget through our 5-point fiscal strategy, which includes increasing our own source revenue, reducing our reliance on the Commonwealth for funding, and giving us the ability to fund more of our services ourselves. As part of the budget I handed down yesterday, the CLP government announced that we will be undertaking 2 major gaming tax reforms. The first of the CLP is legislating a standardised 50% tax rate for lottery ticket reselling and matching and a 50% floor for licensed internet gaming activity. These changes are expected to generate an additional $17.7 million per annum for the Territory. The second reform the CLP is making is increasing the sports bookmaker and betting exchange annual tax cap from 1 million revenue units to 2 million revenue units. And Madam Speaker, these changes are expected to generate an additional $13.1 million per annum for the Territory. Excuse me. However, the CLP is wasting no time in standardising this as part of our first budget. This will be taking effect on 1 July this year. Standardising the internet gaming tax and sports, bookmaker and betting exchange annual tax cap will increase the Territory's own source revenue by over $30 million every year from this year. Madam Speaker, an additional $30 million can do a lot for the Territory. That's almost the same amount we've allocated to domestic, family and sexual violence programs on an ongoing basis. And Madam Speaker, whilst we've changed the taxation rates on some of the gaming, internet gaming and sports bookmakers, we still provide one of the best regulatory environments in the country. which is great to see. We want these people here at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, because they actually employ Territorians. Some of these businesses employ up to 200 and 300 people across the board between those combined businesses. And that's people paying tax, payroll tax here in the Territory, which we also get some revenue from as well. So whilst we've made these changes, Madam Speaker, we've done it in such a way that keeps the Territory competitive in this space, because we want those people staying here, we want those people living here, we want that business. And of course, Madam Speaker, with this revenue, that's more money to go towards essential services and less debt the CLP has to pile on top of Labor's debt disaster, and this is all thanks to the CLP Finocchiaro government's first budget.
Member for Daly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Tourism and Hospitality. Minister, tourism is a major driver of the Territory economy and supports thousands of Territory jobs. The last Labor budget allocated $115 million to the tourism, events and screen sectors. Your budget 2025 cuts their funding to $88.4 million. Minister, how do you justify slashing the tourism budget by more than 23%, the events budget by 12%, the screen industry budget by 30%? How do you plan to rebuild the economy and restore our lifestyle when you are dudding key sectors with a $26 million cut?
Minister for Tourism and Hospitality.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Daly for this very important question. And he will full remember, because he was part of the Labor government, that under Labor in the last 8 years, tourism went backwards. Holiday tourism declined. There was a crime crisis which trashed our reputation, not only in Alice Springs, but right across the Territory, and it continued for 8 long years. So to stand here and accuse us of not growing the economy because not investing in tourism is absolutely hypocritical. Our government is a government who is backing in our tourism industry. Tourism is one of our 5 key pillars. It is one of the most important drivers for economics here in the Northern Territory. And that is why it is part of the rebuilding the economy strategy of 25-28, which our Treasurer talked about some months ago and continues to talk about as he's discussing the budget for this year. And we are investing $88.4 million in tourism, events and screen. Because of this reason, it is an absolute pillar. And of course, we know the sector has 16,000 jobs, Madam Speaker, and it does contribute $3.3 billion to the economy. And that's why we are backing it in. So, Madam Speaker, the events that are so important for our tourism industry, the major events that we have, things like the iconic supercars, the Darwin Festival, Red Centre Nats, Space in the Grass, and a lot of those are CLP initiatives that we introduced many, many years ago. These are important drivers of the visitor economy for holiday visitors, visitors that will come here, enjoy themselves and go and tell everybody else. That is hugely important. Madam Speaker, you will remember this. How long has the Tourism Central Australian project for the new information centre sat on the Labor's budget books, year in, year out? They kept saying it was going to happen and they never actually got it off the ground.
Oh, Minister, please take your seat. Member for Daly, what's your point of order?
110 relevance. If tourism is so important, why did you cut $26 million out of the budget?
Minister.
To the answers that I'm giving him, he may actually learn something. The way that which Labor used to deal with tourism budgets was to basically keep propping them up every year with no certainty of funding, not at all. If they were having a bad time, which they were every single year under Labor, they'd give them a little bit of money, then they'd go and scatter that money all over the place, international markets, domestic markets, whatever it might have been, and then hoped and prayed that things would get better. That is not how you deal with a tourism industry. We had to fix things, fixing the crime crisis, building the tourism base, the baseline funding. We've increased that to $8 million, by $8 million. That's an increase in baseline funding, which provides certainty to our tourism industry so that they can do the marketing spend that they need to do.
Minister. Member for Karama, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Disability. Minister, as you may be aware, I have many residents in my electorate living with disability, including a large number of Indigenous residents. And as you know, Territorians living with disability rely on the stability and accessibility of support services, especially as national discussions continue around the future of the NDIS. Minister, can you please update the House on what the Whanokiraro CLP government is doing to provide certainty to people with disability in the Northern Territory, including any recent investments in the NDIS and other key services that support inclusion and accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing Territorians?
Minister for Disability.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank Member for Karama for the question. The Whanokiraro CLP government is proud to be delivering certainty and stability for Territorians living with disability through a significant and ongoing investment in the Northern Territory's disability sector. As I announced yesterday, we are committing $11.5 million annually to support the Territory's contribution to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. This funding addresses the gap left by the cessation of the Commonwealth's Disability Care Australia Fund and ensures that NDIS services remain stable and accessible for the thousands of Territorians who rely on them every day. Around 1 in 8 people in the Territory live with a disability. This investment is about more than just numbers. It's about providing choice, stability, and dignity to individuals and families, and strengthening the disability services workforce across the Territory. In addition, from 2025-26, we are investing $120,000 per year to continue delivering vital face-to-face Auslan interpreting services in the Northern Territory. This service is critical, particularly in high-priority situations like hospital visits, emergency broadcasts, and press conferences. It ensures that deaf and hard of hearing Territorians are not left behind when it matters most. Madam Speaker, this government stands firmly with Territorians with disability. We will continue working to ensure they are supported, included, and empowered right now and into the future. And while I am on my feet, Madam Speaker, I'm looking forward to working with the new Minister for Disability and NDIS at the federal government, the Honourable Mark Butler. I congratulated him for the new portfolio responsibilities, and I have reinforced this government's earlier commitment to host the Disability Reform Ministerial Council meeting right here in Darwin this June. Thank you.
Member for Arafura.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Youth and Seniors, Seniors and Equality. Minister, you claim you have relocated the Northern Suburbs Youth Hub because you were of community concern, yet only 2 Casuarina residents objected to it. Mr. Warren Ebert, the CEO of Sentinel Property Group, which owns Casuarina Square, said the relocation was purely political and you haven't consulted with anyone. Minister, is it true that your reasons for relocating the hub are political rather than to support young people? Can you confirm if you spoke to anyone from Kurama, Malak, Lianya and Wulagi before this decision?
Minister for Youth, Seniors and Equality.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank Member for Arafura for the question. So I kind of once again informed this chamber about the decision why we wanted to change the youth hub from Casuarina. So that was around the main concern raised by the residents of Casuarina during the election campaign. I know that this opposition is always going back to a survey that was done probably a year ago and always trying to portray that that was the reason why we changed. It is not the reason, and the reason was about why we want to change it. It was from Casuarina residents who were living right around the proposed plan location at that time. And also when it comes to the new proposed location, which is at the Liania Water Park, and I already, during my speech yesterday for the budget, I informed that this chamber, so in the last 2 months, around 5 days, that program from the Sanderson Middle School was running from the Liania Recreation Water Park. The reason why, because of the Sanderson Middle School wasn't available. So this program was already been running from Liania Recreation Park occasionally, and we noted that this is going to be a proposed site. And when it comes to the consultation, unlike the previous government, there was no consultation about the location of the proposed site. This government will be open for that consultation, and from the June, that consultation will commence. The department will be opening that consultation to all the members or all the people living across that area. And to be honest with this chamber, and I know that I think they're trying to say about like this is a mistake or something that we are doing. So my electorate is only 200 meters from this proposed location. Member for Karama's electorate is probably 100 meters or less than 100 meters, and this is going to be in member for Wanguri's electorate. So we are seeing this as an opportunity for the northern suburbs for the young children to have that opportunity after the school, a place that they can go and engage, to have a mentor, to have a great opportunity for them, because there are many disadvantaged kids in the northern suburbs who are not getting that opportunity. And also what we want to do is about like we want to give that opportunity for the young people to do the best in their life. And another thing is about like when it comes to the casuarina, we know that with the children's behavior, there is a potential, like there are issues happening, and which the Chief Minister and the Department of, the Minister Yan is addressing around the issues around the bus station there. And that's a concern that we have as well. We don't want the young people to be we don't want them to mix around with that issues there as well and absorb to that particular issue as well. So we want this to be in a place which is accessible. There are 2 bus stops within 200 meters from this proposed location as well. And when it comes to the consultation, every resident, young people, other stakeholders, all will have the opportunity to provide to that consultation process, which will start in the next few weeks.
Member for Casuarina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Mental Health. Minister, according to Australian Bureau of Statistics, National Study of Health and Wellbeing, 2020 to 2022, the Territory has the second highest rate of people suffering from lifetime mental disorder. I notice in the NT health budget that key investments for 2025 to 2026 include 16.5 million to operate the new mental health ward at the Royal Darwin Hospital. So my question for you, Minister, is what will this new funding provide, and how will it support members of the community?
Minister for Mental Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Casuarina for this important question, and I know how much he cares for people living in his electorate. Madam Speaker, I'm delighted to inform the Assembly that funding of $16 million per year will be used to provide operational costs for the new 24-bed mental health facility from 25-26, with an additional $500,000 for the purchase of medical equipment. These funds, which were unveiled in the first Whanokaiaro CLP budget delivered yesterday, will enable Royal Darwin Hospital to improve patient care and safety, alleviate bed shortages and provide improved mental health services across the Territory. It'll provide a dedicated space for patients experiencing acute mental health crises and will assist to reduce bed block, improving patient flow and health service capacity. Under Labor, funding was only injected into the construction, but nothing was set aside to operate the mental health ward and have it run efficiently. Without operational funding, NT Health would not be able to staff or utilise these new beds, undermining previous investments and worsening existing pressures. We cannot expect to offer support services to some of our most vulnerable members of the community without investing in the operation of our health and mental health services. That's the reality of what we've inherited. But I'm not here just to point the finger, Madam Speaker. I'm here to outline how we're fixing it. This facility, due to be completed next year, will not only reduce the burden on the emergency department, but enhance patient outcomes and safety. The new funding will provide about 56 staff for a 24/7 roster, including nursing, medical, allied health, radiology and pathology professions. It will also be used to purchase hospital beds and other equipment for the ward, as well as cover ongoing costs for utilities, catering, cleaning, pharmacy, clinical consumables and security. Madam Speaker, this investment will improve acute mental health service capacity and make sure people can be cared for in an appropriate purpose-built facility. A facility that complements broader programs aimed at harm minimisation and improving the health and wellbeing of Territorians. Madam Speaker, it's all part of the work the CLP is doing to deliver this year, in our year of action, delivering certainty and security for our health staff and the Northern Territory community. Madam Speaker, I've nothing further to add to that, and while I'm on my feet, I ask that any further questions be placed on the written notice paper.
Disappointment all round.